Good evening, and welcome to the September 8th, 2008 Planning Commission meeting. Will you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? And as we say the pledge tonight, I hope that you remember those who perished in the 9/11 attacks. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Adam?
Here.
Commissioner Fisher? Absent. Commissioner Grumney?
Here.
Commissioner Lund?
Here.
Chair Reynolds?
Here. Thank you. This is the time for public comment cards, and I do have one card this evening. Mr. Nick Kidway, if you come forward, you have 5 minutes.
I begin in the name of God, who's most beneficial, most merciful. My name is Nick Iqbal Kidwai. Last time I checked, Commissioner Grumney, still Director of Concerned Citizens of Thousand Oaks, dwindling, but still have some members who are interested in city affairs. Good evening, Chair Darrell Reynolds, Planning Commissioners. You know, at the national level, the talk of change is everywhere. Whether it's Democrats, Republicans, everybody wants a change, and people are sick and tired of what has been happening in our country, it seems like. Except in this city hall. The more the times change, the more things remain the same. Wish I didn't have to come over here and I could retire and be in the comfort of my home, but it's horrible. I mean, I don't like to be negative and come and complain, but I mean, you know, we are in the midst of an energy crisis. We were 5 years ago, but everybody was driving these SUVs and thinking that there was no end to the oil. I mean, this hall over here has less than a half a dozen people. It accommodates 400. This city has another hall, it's called the boardroom, which is designed for small meetings. This city is close to build out. There is hardly any interest in these matters anymore unless you have something like the mobile home ordinance. And in fact, people tell me, Nick, you have something personal. Why do you criticize these people? I mean, in fact, one planning commissioner attacked me personally for being harsh on staff a few months back. At least did not take my name. But I mean, I'm an American or a half American. I mean, I can criticize Obama or McCain, Sarah, my friend, but I cannot criticize staff. I mean, I'm not taking any personal names. I know how to talk. I mean, but this city is not well run. And I can back it up because the director on his last day, not the last one, but 2-3 times before on his last meeting, counted all the bulbs. At that time, it was 380 bulbs over here. When there is a large audience, meet here. But when not, meet in the boardroom. And also, I mean, there is a thing called, I mean, there's a business person. I admire architects and all that. And I think Mr. Adam is the only business person here on the days. There's a thing called break-even point. There's a thing called, which I've talked about, the law of diminishing returns. I mean, why do you have to meet with one lonely case and spend, I mean, there's over half a dozen staff people over here. I mean, these are people that are paid by taxpayers. I mean, I wish, and I would invite my friend Sarah to come over here and talk over here about saving money for the taxpayers, about the bridge for nowhere, about saving money on the corporate jet. I mean, talk is cheap. But I don't understand why no one on the Planning Commission takes the steps and asks and makes a motion. In fact, some people, Planning Commission in the past had asked the staff as to how much does it cost to have a meeting. And I think it was 3 years ago, something like $1,200 for the energy costs, etc. But the thing that they did not talk about, that days cost $300,000. And life in the past has been 5 years. So when you amortize that, it comes to about $5,000, Mr. Adam. $5,000 per meeting. Well, I'll be conservative. Let's say it's $3,000. I can bet if the planning commissioners had to pay from their own pocket and they had an option, they'll say, we're not crazy, we don't want to waste our time. Also, like I said, when you have only one case, you should really, you should really change from bi-monthly to monthly meetings, or maybe 6 weeks. Some places meet every quarterly. I mean, I know it might be an hardship for some architects and stuff like that, but you have to think about the cost of doing business. In fact, I found this from 2000, the city's goals: operate city fiscally and managerially responsible manner. And it said 52% of that had been completed in 2006. If 33 seconds, if the TOTV can show my overhead, there's a conference about redevelopment abuse in San Francisco. This is a wonderful group of citizens in the state thank you to TOTV showing that blight is what we consider. Almost all the commercial area in the city is blighted and in part of the redevelopment agency and is a tax grab. And the money that should go to the state basically is coming to the city. Thank you, Chair, for letting me speak.
Thank you, Mr. Kidway. Written comments, announcements, and continuances, Mr. Town.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Case 6A has been removed from the agenda. It was originally anticipated this would be heard by the Commission tonight. However, upon further review by staff of additional topographic information, it was determined that the case, in fact, does not encroach into 25% or greater natural terrain. Therefore, it will be processed administratively through a minor modification process rather than a major modification to be heard by the Planning Commission. So that item is, as you can see, not before you tonight.
Thank you. Will the clerk please open case 6B?
Hearing advertised as required by law is hereby open to consider agenda item 6B regarding case DP 2007-70760, applicant Astra Holding, Inc., request to consider a mitigated negative declaration and mitigation monitoring plan, allow the construction of a 2-story medical building with a combination above and below parking structure, location 1120 Newbury Road.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Alawani. You're going to give the staff report?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, I'd like to direct your attention to your monitors for staff's presentation. As mentioned, the case before you tonight is DP 2007-70760. The applicant is Astra Holding to allow the construction of a 2-story medical office building over a 2-level parking structure located at 1120 Newbury Road. For the description, and this is an area photo of the site. Just for your Fentu Park Road is located to west of the site, and Hague Road is just east of the site. The existing uses around, this is a mobile home park, then an auto repair facility, and a self-storage facility to the west of the site, and there is a 2-story office and medical building to the east, and the corner of Hague Road and Newbury Road, there's another medical office that's under construction. Spine Center is just between the freeway and Newbury Road, east of the site, and along the freeway itself, there's a sound wall that steps down from the frontage along the mobile home park down, steps down until the hill or the slope right next to the Spine Center. Here's a picture of the site from across from Newbury Road. The site approximately is 0.77 acres in size. The zoning is CO, commercial office, and currently there's an existing single-family dwelling that's vacant. The building is a 2-story medical office building. It contains 20,000 square feet of medical offices, and the building coverage is 29% compared to the 50% maximum allowed by code. The applicant is proposing 16 surface parking spaces, and there's a parking structure as mentioned. The parking structure is under the proposed building. It contains 2 levels, one below grade and one above grade, and there are 84 parking spaces, 42 spaces in each level, for a total of 100 spaces, which is what the project requires based on the code. Because of the above-grade parking structure, there are additional landscape setbacks required. So the front yard setback requires additional 7 feet for a total of 27 feet. The rear yard setback requires additional 5 feet for a total of 25 feet. And the side yards require additional 4 feet for a total of 9 feet each side. There's a picture or an exhibit of the site plan showing the layout. The building design, the architecture is contemporary, Mediterranean with a tower feature with a pavilion roof. There's a full mansard roof on the rest of the building with stone veneer. And the average building height, 25 feet, which is consistent with the commercial office zone. This is the north elevation facing Newberry Road. East elevation. The west elevation. And the south elevation at the rear of the site. And here's a color rendering of the project as you look at it from Newberry Road. Development standard for the project complies with the commercial office and municipal code development standards regarding setbacks, height, and design. The applicant is requesting one waiver, and that's to allow lot size less than 3 acres as required by code for an above-grade parking structure. And as I mentioned earlier, the site itself is 0.77 acres. Staff supports the lot size waiver because, as mentioned, the parking structure is under the building and is not a freestanding, and the only physical part of it is the opening and the other wall in the front. Again, as I mentioned, one level of the parking structure will be below grade, and the structure will be screened from public view by the landscaping on site, which includes the landscaping adjacent to the building and the front yard landscape setback. And there are mature trees on the north side of Newberry Road and the sound wall along the freeway, which screens some of the project. And in the past, the Planning Commission approved a similar waiver for above-grade parking structure for an office building on Marine Street. And that project contains 2.64 acres. And however, the size of that project is 64,000 square feet compared to this project, which is 20,000 square feet. Environmental review, a mitigated negative declaration number 265 was prepared for the project in accordance with CEQA. Mitigation measures incorporated into the project to reduce potentially significant impacts to less than significant level. Applicant has agreed to the mitigation measures in the M&D as required by CEQA. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve M&D number 265 and mitigation monitoring report and approve development permit 2007-70760 based on the findings and subject to the conditions contained in the staff report. That concludes staff's presentation. I'll be available for any questions.
Thank you. Are there questions of staff? Commissioner Adam?
Thank you. Hello, Mr. Alawami. How are you?
Good. How about you?
I'm good, thanks. In the M&D report, it talked about the groundwater that was encountered at the 14 to 20 foot depth. So I presume that's going to have, well, I know that'll have an effect on the subsurface parking. How are they going to remedy that? I mean, it talked about either that it would be watertight or they'd use drainage. The
applicant's architect can answer that, but yeah, I mean, they could waterproof the parking structure and take care of that issue.
Okay.
But the applicant architect can answer.
I'll ask the applicant that. I'm just curious about how effective that is for permanent groundwater. On the parking, on the 100 parking spots, 58 are for the customers and 42 are for the employees, because you needed 100 spaces total. Is that ratio proper? I mean, it seems like there's a lot of employee spaces versus customers. Does the code differentiate between what has to be customers and what has to be employees, or?
There's nothing in the code that differentiate between the two. It doesn't say specifically this is for employees and tenants and customers. What we looked at is other projects, and it's 1/3 to 2/3 ratio on other projects that we looked at. One is on Jensen Court. There's a small office building with a parking structure. That's 1/3 to 2/3 ratio. And based on the floor plan of the project, there's about 14 units, my understanding. And let's say there's a doctor and 2 staff, that's 3 to each unit, that's 42 spaces. So it's not really tailored for that, but it's 1/3 to 2/3 in other projects that staff looked at.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was getting at. So it's not that unusual of a proportion. Okay.
But there's nothing in the code specifically says that.
All right. And, well, there's just one other thing on the height. Of course, the code says 25-foot maximum in the commercial office, and we use the average height measurement.
Correct.
And I noticed that on B2, I guess staff took 12 different heights for a total of 301 feet. Was it just a coincidence that it came to exactly 25 feet? Or
Well, that's based on the numbers, yeah. I mean, it's kind of, if you consider that, yes, but it's based on a different elevation and different level of each elevation, and that came up to that number.
Well, that was convenient, I must say. I couldn't quite discern from the plans which footage was where, but the average certainly is the 25. Okay, and then I just had a quick question for Mr. Town about this parking ordinance. Considering that we're looking at something tonight that requires a waiver, and it's seemingly that's happened in the past for these projects, do we need to look at the ordinance as a whole, as far as, you know, freestanding and above ground needing 3 acres, but below ground we ask for waivers? Do we need to hone that ordinance a little bit, or?
Well, what you have before you is a combination, again, above and below ground parking structure. The standard lot size for above ground freestanding structures is 3 acres. And for below ground, it is 1 acre. So this is actually close to the below ground. Because this is a multi-level, 1 above ground and 1 below, we've basically applied it to the more strict standard of 3 acres. But that's not that uncommon. When we have a sort of a hybrid design approach like this, we look at the more stringent requirements and apply those. And when you apply those in this particular case, that is where it raises the waiver issue, and that is something certainly within the domain of the Planning Commission to consider.
The rule of thumb then is go with the stricter requirement.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. I'll proceed with the cards, and the main speaker, who will have 15 minutes, is Mr. Neil Scribner. If you've come forward, state your name and city residence, please.
Good evening. I'm Neil Scribner, architect for the project, 4765 Via Don Luis, 91320. And the applicant, Stefan Bostanian, is here this evening and would be pleased to answer questions should you have any. I also want to say up front that all the conditions are acceptable to my client. I'll answer the questions you brought up, Commissioner Adams, first. Regarding groundwater, you have to seal the bottom slab regardless of whether we'd run into groundwater or not, because there's always a potential in the heavy year water rising, so we put the Visqueen under there. Now in this case, when we know there's water, we put a layer of pipes under the slab. Those go to a sump pump, and in this case we're increasing the sump pump over a typical project about 3 times, so that we're sure that if there's water under there, any pressures, that we can pump it out and get rid of it. But at any rate, if the pump failed, we feel the water would probably still go on downhill towards the freeway and really not be an issue here. And remember, I think the parking lot in the rear behind us probably caused more water, but conversely, we're putting parking lot and so on here, so we'll be taking a lot of surface water on past us towards the street that's not happening today. So after the project, you did a groundwater test, you wouldn't find as much there as you're finding today. Regarding the parking ratio, it's our intent to keep the parking garage open for customers as well as the staff. But the fire department asked us to put a block to the lower level so that, I'm sorry, the police department, not the fire department, police department, so that we would keep the customers up at the first level and only the staff would go below. And so we did that. Now, if there's an issue with additional parking needed by the customers, we would have to open that as needed to allow flow down to that lower level. Regarding the height, the reason the number worked out exact is because I do have some control over floor-to-floor heights, the way I do balconies and so on, and I use the city measurement standard, which we've been using here for, 30 years, since I've been here anyway. And I have control over where I put the finished dirt. So I can adjust that dirt. That's why I can get it right on the number. If I'd made a 24-foot average, then I would have had a less desirable project. It wouldn't have changed any heights. It'd still look the same from anywhere, but it'd been less desirable. So by raising the dirt and making exactly 25, it really benefits everyone, including the project, of course. Now, the site is a CO zone because it's next to residential. The projects next door on either side are about 80 feet from the residential to the south. This project is over 300 feet. The height of this building is exactly the same as the other two that are already built within 80 feet of the residential. I did those projects, so I know how the heights were figured in exactly the same way. We also used a pitched roof here, which is required in a CO zone. We covered it with mission tile, so it would be compatible and consistent with the residential area. The north elevation facing Newberry Road is all stone, as you notice. That material, it's the dark material, is a stone material, and that wraps around on the sides as well. The second floor is set back at the front about, I believe it's about 12 feet, with a balcony, and the idea there is to prevent a step design down towards the street, so you reduce the wall impact that you would have, with a straight wall, the full 2 stories. We also, by the way, when we do that step, we get credit for height reduction, if you understand what I mean. The building is set back 120 feet to the center line of the street at the closest point at the corner. And all the driveway, parking area in the front is going to be a colored concrete. Well, we won't have any asphalt here in the project. And we're going to do block inlays, one at the entrance when you come in, and then one in front of the lobby as you enter into the building. The building is consistent with the Regency Medical to the east, which has 44 condo units. We're going to design these units as if they're condo units, and we may eventually go condos. In fact, that's our plan to consider that, but I don't think we've fully made that decision tonight. That concludes my presentation, and if you have any questions, I'd be pleased to answer them.
Good evening, Mr. Scribner. I think Commissioner Lunn has a question for you.
Okay.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
In regards to, I appreciate very much that you indicated that you accept all the conditions, but in regards to Commissioner Adams' question about condition number 29, which is the customers and tenants parking, if this project gets moved along this evening and gets approved, would you be amenable, or would the applicant be amenable to maybe a small tweak in language to maybe include, and we're not talking about water here, the path of least resistance, where the employees and the tenants be required to park in that employee area downstairs, and that would probably alleviate any concern in terms of ratio?
That's not a problem.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Adams?
Well, I think what I hear you say, Mr. Scribner, that there is a gate that's been suggested to sequester the customer parking from the employee, but under circumstances you'd move the gate to let the customers down to the lower level, right?
The gate would be at the lowest level. So the
Right,
customers would be free to park in the upper level.
Right.
But only the staff with some kind of a ticket or whatever the system is would go to the lowest level.
All right. Well, maybe I misheard you then, because I thought you'd said that under certain circumstances you'd let customers park in that lower level. Did I not?
I said that, and the reason is if we do have that many customers related to staff, then the only place to park them would be to the lower level.
Okay.
I don't see that happening based on my experience with other buildings, but that is a possibility, and we always have to keep that open. There's no place on the street to park, so we'll have to take them to the lower level.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable to me, but I don't know if that works with this condition 29. Maybe you have a comment with that.
Sure, if I could just address that briefly. The prohibition on customers from parking in the lowest level, actually, it originated with the police department, but it also was codified in Article 24 of the Municipal Code under the Planning and Zoning section, and it states that all parking stalls within below-grade parking structures shall be designed for the use of owners, tenants, and employees only. So that is the source of this restriction, and the idea is for customers who are coming and going for safety reasons only use the uppermost levels, those that are above ground. In this case, that then results in the 58 number. In other words, 58 parking spaces, 42 upper level of the parking structure, plus the 16 in the front parking lot area. It gives you 58 for visitors, and then the other 42 are restricted to staff.
Okay, so based on that, then the applicant would need to note that lower level is strictly for staff, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
I don't think it's an issue because I just don't see that many patients or customers coming here.
Any other questions? Mr. Scribner, you had just talked about condominium conversion, the possibility. There is a condition 48 which does not allow any condominium conversion at all. Were you aware of condition 48?
No, I wasn't.
Well, what it says is that you can't sell it off unless you comply with the Subdivision Map Act and file a map. They can't be individually sold off because you're not processing a condominium right now.
Oh, okay. That's fine.
You'd have to comply with the MAP Act and submit an application for to condo.
Right, which we would do, I think, pretty quick.
Right. But you should be aware that there are limitations and there are restrictions if you plan on doing that with wastewater laterals and so forth. So it might be something you want to talk to the planning department or Public Works Department.
We've actually already designed this with mechanical, plumbing, and so on, as if it was a condominium. We prepared for that.
Okay.
Okay, good. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Scribner.
Thank you.
And I also have a card for Mr. Nick Kidway, if you come forward. And state your name and city residence, please.
Nick Iqbal Kidwai, resident of Newberry Park, Director, Concerned Citizen of Thousand Oaks, Honorable Chair Darrell Reynolds, Planning Commissioners. First of all, I would like to congratulate the architect for the fine building. I didn't see the picture in the packet, but I saw it in the over here, as well as we all saw it on the screen. And the project looks beautiful, but I have concerns, as should the Planning Commission. He's a great architect, so maybe initially with the pictures of the landscaping, it doesn't look as bad. But your ordinance and 0.77 acres do not mesh, do not jive together. The findings for approval, it says that the lot size is not compatible, and it requires 3 acres. You also talk about number 6, that it is also consistent with the goals of the redevelopment agency, and I'm disappointed as usual that you do not show in your packet. I mean, you carry a lot of paper generally, what the goals of the redevelopment agency are. And at least the staff should mention that. It also says that the MND has some environmental effects and you have to mitigate them. So it's not really that cut and dry. It says on page 5 of the staff report that the below grade, and I quote, below grade parking structures require 1 acre minimum lot size, increased front and backyards. And Mr. Scribner's own letter kind of disturbs me because he's written a wonderful letter and but pointed out, and I quote, there are so many variances approved and none denied in the past. And this is what brings me to the main point. What does a variance mean? I mean, why do we need a variance? Why do we need to bend our rules? Well, if you really analyze this properly, under normal circumstances, if you build a smaller building on this lot and have the regular parking lot, it would not be a 20,000 square foot building. It might be a 15 or 10,000 square building, or maybe 5,000 square building. And what does that translate? In this city, we do not charge for parking. Parking is a zero revenue thing. It's for the comfort and convenience which people really want. But by building a bigger building than the code requires, it helps maximize the profit, which goes, I mean, I'm a business person, I mean, we all want to maximize, and I know you're not supposed to look at the economic impact, but indirectly, you have to. And so, I ask, what is the urgency to approve this tonight without changing and revisiting and deliberating that whether this 3 acres is outmoded, it's a dinosaurial ordinance, and debating it, and then having the applicant come back by continuing this hearing and vote on it, so that it's a fair game, it's a fair play for all business people. I drove by the Hyden building, and you cannot see the contrast between this building and that. I mean, you see the big parking structure in the back, then you see the fairly large building in the back. This applicant, by being granted a variance, will have an advantage over other business people in that he does not have to dedicate what the code requires to parking. And I do not like to play these games in the sense we know what Caruso did. I mean, we say, well, he's very successful, but you can't find parking spaces. When I'm sick, I do not want to be hunting for a parking spot, and I do not like to park in a parking structure as do a lot of women. I mean, I would like to park outside. Unless I'm working all day, then it's a good thing for the employees, like Mr. Scribner writes. But I would ask that you should humbly not get into this habit and clamp down on these deviations. There's no reason for granting. The findings do not exist. And continue this hearing, and on an emergency basis, revisit this ordinance and change it for the time. Thank you for letting me speak.
We'll go back to staff at this time. Mr. Alawani, do you have anything else to add?
Sorry. Just a quick thing. Again, the 1 acre lot size is for below grade parking structure. The 3 acre minimum lot is for above grade. The 1 acre lot size requires less, the below grade requires less landscape than the above grade. And with regard to landscaping, there's 27 feet of front yard landscape setback. In addition, there's 4 feet in the right-of-way for a total of over 30 feet of landscape in the front, which should be sufficient to screen the project from view with landscaping and trees. With that, that's all what staff has. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, the staff? Mr. Town?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make a quick comment. What is before the commission tonight is not a variance, it is a waiver, and that is provided for in the code. It specifically says that unless otherwise permitted by the Planning Commission or City Council, that the standard would be the 3 acres or 1 acres. So it is, again, within your jurisdiction to consider that matter.
Thank you. Yes.
And just kind of finishing up Mr. Town's thoughts, what that means is that it's strictly written into the code that there are circumstances under which the code should be tweaked a little bit depending on the use or the project that's going forward. It's not a deviation from your municipal code because it's written right into your code to allow you to do that. And then I'd also remind the Planning Commission the reason why you have that 1 acre and that 3 acre minimum lot size. It was because the intention was when that municipal code was adopted is that it would be a freestanding parking garage. That's not the situation that you have here. So it really does warrant a waiver according, and staff supports the waiver in this case.
Okay, any other questions to staff? Mr. Scribner, you have 5-minute rebuttal. If you come forward, state your name and city residence, please.
Neil Scribner, architect, 4765 Via Don Luis, Thousand Oaks, 91320. Yes, I didn't really hear anything. Unless you have a specific question, but you'd like to respond to, I'd be pleased to.
I believe Commissioner Grumney has a question.
Okay.
Hi, Mr. Scribner. Just so I have a better understanding of the building itself, you said it's 14 individual units that are there. Is it restricted only to medical use, or could it be other business use that's being done in the building?
Well, that's a good question. I assume it's medical, and the parking is more strict for medical. It's 5 per 1,000 gross for medical, is 4 per 1,000 net for a standard office building. So I assume we could theoretically put other uses in there besides medical. Would the code allow that? I'm honestly not sure.
Well, the only reason I was bringing that up is because you had made the comment that you didn't think that there was going to be, for the individual units, a lot of customers coming and going. And so I was wondering what types of uses were being intended for it to have a better sense of understanding of the numbers of customers that are coming.
Well, I say that, and I was, when we changed the parking for regular office buildings many years ago, is because at that time I became aware that we just had too many parking spaces. So we went out and did the counts, took a lot of time, figured out we had too much parking for the use. I think it's true of medical, the one right next door, for instance. You go out any time during the day, you can go every hour on the hour and count cars, you'll find a lot of empty spaces. And that's true, I think, of a lot of medical, newer medical buildings with the new code. There are exceptions, I realize that, but this would be a typical, just like the one next door. I don't see any distinction here. And there's a tendency with the way the doctors work that you just don't have the intensity of parking and patients that you used to.
How do you determine that? How many, is there so many per hour that you use as kind of a guideline to determine how much parking you need?
No, actually, it's really the city's ordinance that we have to use. It's not. I've never tried to make the case that we need less parking, but we provide 5 per 1,000 because that's what the city requires.
Okay. Thank you.
If I could just follow up, Mr. Scribner's correct with that. When you have your general retail, city requires parking standards of 1 space for every 250 square feet. Because of medical use, the city requires 1 space for every 200 square feet. And the uses that will be permitted in this building are set forth in the CO zone, which include medical, dental clinics, professional offices like accountants. It does not allow veterinary buildings. It allows a pharmacy if it was as an accessory building, I believe. But those are the types of uses that are permitted, and the parking restrictions are set forth based, they're a little bit more strict compared to your general retail or commercial use.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, Mr. Scribner? Thank you very much, Mr. Scribner.
Thank you.
And at this time, I'll close the public hearing and discussion. Commissioner Lund?
Thank you, Chair Reynolds. I just wanted to make some comments about this project and the design. I think that the area that this project is being developed in is the appropriate area. We have medical facilities that are in that particular area. The design of the building and the parking was well done for the property. The grading is in compliance with our standards. Building coverage is well below our standards for the city. The building height is in compliance. The setbacks are in compliance. Parking and circulation under the allowable maximum. The disabled access has been accounted for. The scenic highway freeway corridor has been accounted for, and is in compliance with our laws and applicable rules for how we look at these things. The one issue that we were talking about, I consider a non-issue. This is why, in my belief, I'm not as eloquent as our city attorney, but why we have waivers, because not every project fits into that proverbial perfect box, and we have to take a look at these projects, to look at these things to see exactly how we fit and how this project can work, so it not only complies with our standards, but also allows the owner to have the use of the property. And in this particular case, it's a great design. We have at-grade parking and below parking, and that works well here. And what we're talking about in terms of what we've done in the past, we're talking about 3/10 of an acre difference in terms of projects compared to the Marine address. So with that, I'm going to move to approve the mitigated negative declaration number 265 and the mitigation monitoring plan. And also move to approve the development permit DP 2007-70760 based on the staff report findings and subject to the attached conditions. And I would also like to include on condition number 29 just a small language tweak to require employees and tenants in that building to park in the designated employee parking.
Thank you. Comments? Commissioner Grumney?
Well, that was very well said, Commissioner Lund. So I'm just going to add a couple things to it. I'm going to be voting in favor of it, but I just want to make a couple other comments about the design of the building itself. I think it is really wonderful that there is the combination of parking the way that it is. I think it's a better use of land. I think it's visually more appealing. And also the landscaping that you're planning to have in the front, I think it's going to be a wonderful addition for that area. So I just wanted to point out those two extra features.
Commissioner Adam?
Thank you. So we are using the stricter requirement that because it has above-grade parking, it should have a 3-acre minimum lot. And but the fact of the matter is the parking is not freestanding. It's underneath the building. So that, to me, supports the waiver. In fact, I think it's preferable to have the parking underneath the building versus spread out all in front of it. So to me, it's more aesthetically pleasing, and I think Mr. Scribner made a good point in his letter that the employees and the customers will like it better too. So that's, to me, supports the waiver. And as far as the project itself, I mean, it's along the 101 freeway. It's right there in front of it. It's very commercial. It fits right in. The parking's hidden from view. It's got compatible heights with the other buildings. There's no oak trees. Thank you, Mr. Scribner. It's not really near anything residential. There's no 25% slopes. Thank you again. We get a street dedication out of it, and with street improvements and a new sidewalk. So all in all, it's a win-win. Yeah. Thank you. It's an appropriate project, and obviously I'm going to support the motion.
And I also will support the motion. Once again, Mr. Scribner, you've done an excellent job of designing this building, and I really like that only 29%. There'll be only 29% coverage with the building on this piece of property, and I think the design of the subterranean parking and then the one level above is an excellent plan on this. So with that, are there any final comments to the motion, Commissioner Lund?
None, thank you, ma'am.
Okay, then please vote.
Motion passed 4-0.
And there is a 10-day appeal period. Okay, thank you. We'll continue on. Are there any miscellaneous items reports?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On page, let's see, 44 of your packet is the tentative hearing agenda for upcoming Planning Commission meetings. We do have several cases scheduled for your next meeting on September 22nd. Currently, we don't have hearings scheduled for October 13th, and then we get back into several cases on October 27th, so to be aware of that as you plan your calendars. And then also on page 46 is a summary of cases which you have heard and which will be heard by the City Council. The issue on fence and wall heights along major arterials will be heard by the City Council tomorrow evening. And also 2 cases which you have heard and rendered decisions on will be heard by the City Council. They have been appealed, including the Geckel case and also the T-Mobile case that was proposed or is proposed on Kimber. And that's all I had at this time.
Thank you. Minutes of the July 28th meeting. Is there a motion? Commissioner Grumney.
I move approval of the minutes of the meeting of July 28th, 2008.
Please vote.
Motion passed 4-0.
Thank you. Are there any AB 1234 reports?
Wait, can we go back? I think that you need to redo that.
To the minutes? Oh, okay. We'll go back to the minutes of July 28, 2008. Commissioner Grumney made the motion to approve. Please vote.
Motion passed 3-1. Commissioner Lund abstained.
Thank you. And again, AB 1234 reports. There are none. Commission comments. Commissioner Adam?
Yeah, I do have one, and this is in conjunction with what Chair Reynolds mentioned at the beginning of the meeting about 9/11. There is a Freedom Walk at the Reagan Library, 5 o'clock this Thursday, to commemorate the victims and survivors of 9/11. So if you so desire, please come on out for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Then I'll adjourn the meeting to 6:30 p.m. on